Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to some Club 100 Sprint Championship racing in 2022, where we're at a slightly overcast but nevertheless dry Rye House in Hoddesdon, just slightly north of London. We're jumping straight into our first heat of the day, where we started towards the back, and off the start didn't get the world's best start. Moved backwards a few positions. Just the side of the grid that we were on wasn't the side that progressed the best coming off the start, but no matter. We'll see if we can push ourselves forward and get ourselves into a better position as we get towards the end of the race. We can do another position there going into pylon corner, but we very quickly get it back as we go through the right-hander before we finish the lap. So coming onto the next lap, we're behind George Lawler, going down the start-finish straight, who's looking for a move from the kart in front but decides against it, which means that he's possibly going to be a little bit wide going through this first corner. And as we come up onto the B1B, he does indeed go slightly wide, and we actually slot it up the inside. And we try to take the racing line, but George was still just on our rear corner. And we get a little bit tangled up, and that ends up sending George into the tyres on the apex of that corner there. Not good at all. Not what we intended with that move, and it ended up taking George out of the race. So really sorry about that to George. It's, in trying to take the racing line, didn't quite realise he still had his nose on the corner, and after we got tangled up, there was nothing that really could be done. So unfortunate there, and a penalty at the end of the race was probably fair enough. There was no intent in forcing George towards the tyres, but a penalty, seeing as he didn't finish the race, I think is fair enough for us. So as we move on, we can see that we're trying to make a move around the outside as we go in through the New Bell complex, and then we take our normal racing line going through the last corner, and I think that's George Line in front there, hand in the air, a bit frustrated with what's going on for him, but we'll see if we can capitalise what's going on there. We've got three karts getting quite fighty with each other, which is only going to slow them down and help us catch up with them. So we're now right on the back of the driver in front, all through a bit of fighting on their part. Now, we can't really go for a move into that hairpin because we weren't particularly good all weekend coming off of it, but we're able to make the move stick there because of the contact of the two karts in front slowing each other down more than it would have stopped us from getting through. So we'll move on now to Heat 2. We're starting on the front row of the grid with Dante Dillon on pole, and it was going to be important to try and get a good launch off the line here, because otherwise we'll end up with a stream of karts on our right hand side as we fight to try and get ourselves over towards the apex. So we end up losing one position there, and down into third position. See if we can make that up as we go through that, but we end up a little bit of a nudge going through the first hairpin, but nothing too severe, and we end up losing that toe that we would have had off the back of the kart in front, which isn't ideal, as we've got another kart throwing it right down our inside, and we don't really have anything to fight back with there. A little bit heavy for lightweights now, and it's off really quite tight, slow corners where the revs really die down. It's not helping us coming off those corners. So we end up fourth place in race number 2, and nothing else really happened there. So we'll move on to race number 3, where we are starting in fourth place on the grid. Nothing to do with where we finished the last race, it just so happens that's where we are. And we're behind Reece Pope here, who is a quick driver. Ben Lambeth on pole gets a really good launch coming off the line. Our side of the grid does not so much, and that puts both Ben and Sam Esri up into 1 and 2. Reece slips himself into third place, and I am in fourth, having to defend a little bit going into the hairpin just to try and put people off going for the move going into there, run ourselves all the way to the outside to try and keep our momentum up. But in doing that little bit of defending, we can already see that the three karts in front of us have already pulled a gap, and that gap would only get a little bit bigger as time went on. Nothing else would happen for us. We were kind of a bit of a lonely race. There was no one immediately behind us, and we couldn't really catch up with the guys in front of us. So fourth place again at the end of Heat 3 as we move on to the A final. Now, we had 2 fourth places, which is all right, not the best results in the world, but the penalty in the first race definitely hurt us, which then puts us further down in the A final grid. So no B final, which is a good thing. It's nice to be part of the A final straight away, but maybe not as high as we could have been had we had a slightly cleaner first heat. So starting P17 on the inside of the grid. Now, this far down, it might have actually been better to be on the even side of the grid. As we saw yesterday, we had Ben Lambeth. Not Ben Lambeth, actually, no, it was Andrew Graham who absolutely sent it around the outside of turn 1, having been slightly further down, because you just keep that momentum up. So we're able to sort of sneak it up the inside there, get pinched a little bit, but we're able to sneak it up the inside and gain a few positions as other drivers end up running wide. That's Fraser Brunton in front, who's normally up at the pointy end, so if we can try and keep up with him, that would be good for us. Tried to make a move up the inside there of Ben, but didn't really work. We have a little look as well, but that's not happening. For us, we get our nose chopped off, deservedly so as well. We weren't really in a good place to make that move, so it's a good job we didn't end up clattering into anybody. Try having a little bit of a sneak up the inside of Fraser there, but he's able to keep more momentum going around the outside than we were, having it tight, and we will finish lap number 1 in 14th, having started 17th, and maybe even dropped back a little bit off the start, but essentially starting 17th, we're up 3 places at the end of lap 1, and we can see in front of us there's a good train of karts that if we can keep on the bumper of Fraser, because we know he's going to try and make some good moves through, if we can follow him through, we might be in a good position to get towards the top 10 late in this race. But the first thing is we have to try and stay on his bumper, which we don't really do there. We end up outbraking ourselves going into the second hairpin, and in an effort to not clatter into the back of Fraser, we end up losing some speed, losing some momentum, and end up falling off his rear bumper. So now it's a bit of work to do to try and catch up with him and the group in front of him, and we kind of need them to fight a little bit now, because you can see how quickly that gap opens up around Rye House if you're not on the race pace, and if they can fight a little bit with each other, then maybe that will help us as we end up running a bit wide going through the last corner, having to give space to the car behind, and they end up getting a better run down the main straight than we do, which ends up demoting us down into P15 now. So it's not the end of the world getting overtaken. We've still got plenty of laps left in this one, but we don't want to be just falling backwards. If we're going to get overtaken, we kind of want to stay right on their bumper, and if they've overtaken us based off pure pace, then fine, absolutely, but can we use them to catch back up? In this case, you can see that absolutely we couldn't. We weren't able to keep pace with the guys in front, which is a shame. I kind of felt like from the Saturday we had some pretty decent pace just today. We weren't as on it as we were on the Saturday. Maybe not quite as good a rhythm as we had been, but we're still P15 as we come down towards the start-finish straight, or the first corner rather, the start-finish straight. We lose another position there to Yusuf, who we know again is another quick driver, normally a little bit further towards the pointy end, so if we can try and stay on his bumper again, we'll be alright. Gets a little bit squirrely going through the hairpin, which allows us to sort of catch back up a little bit. And one thing I'd noticed on this Saturday, a lot of guys were using a lot more of the track than I was going into that second hairpin. Now, it's not so much the fact that I couldn't do it, I just didn't feel as comfortable. I felt whenever I dipped my left tyres onto that brickwork and then tried to slow it down, get it turned in, it just really unsettled the kart for me. So something I was doing, it wasn't allowing me to use that extra bit of width that some of the guys in front were, as Justin Draper goes for a big old send going into hairpin 1, but can't get it slowed down, so I'm able to get back up underneath him, going towards the second hairpin. But yeah, using that brickwork on the left-hand side, it definitely was quicker, so a lot of the quicker guys were doing it, but for whatever reason, I couldn't sort of keep the kart balanced under brakes and then get it turned in, so I ended up not feeling comfortable using that brickwork and keeping myself just on the black stuff. So as we're about to start lap 16, we're having to defend going into the first corner, knowing that Justin is there chomping at the bit to try and get past us. These last few laps now are going to be pretty important if we don't want to sink any further back. Now, whilst it's not necessarily fighting for a leading position, we want to try and finish up as high as we can. So these last few laps we weren't going to be able to catch up with the guys in front, even if they're sort of really quite battling. The sheer distance between us, we're not going to be able to catch back up. So it's all about keeping Justin and the other people that are currently behind us where they are. So as we come on to the final lap now, again, we're keeping it absolutely staple towards the right-hand side, not giving them any chance whatsoever to get up our inside, keeping it slightly tighter than we would be through the tightening radius of Stadium Corner, and then all the way over to the left-hand side, making sure there's no possibility for a send going through there, running it all the way around to the outside, And after a look over the shoulder here, we could see that there's been a little bit of elbows, I think, between the cars behind, and we had a little bit of a gap, so we could now use our normal racing line to finish the lap. Although we do cover off the Nouvelle complex just in case, as it doesn't lose you that much time anyway. But as we come around the final corner to finish lap 17 of the A final, we'll cross the line, this time in P16. So not our best result that we've ever had in an A final, but it was still a good bit of fun racing. And it was nice to be back at Rye House, having not been there for a long time, and it being where we picked up our first go-kart. So thank you very much for watching. As always, have a good one, and see you next time.